6:12 in the morning, East Asia Sea, first light of dawn. Most cities were still asleep, but military radars were already active. Sensors were operating at full sensitivity. Command centers were fully staffed and watching every signal. United States forces were conducting routine operations in the region. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that suggested an immediate crisis. Then the data began to change. An unusual movement was detected coming from the North Korean coastline. It was not civilian traffic. It was not a scheduled exercise. It was deliberate, controlled, and executed in silence. The pattern stood out immediately. Consistent speed, precise trajectory, unusual coordination. Within minutes, military analysts recognized that this was not random behavior. North Korea was doing something different. It was not a direct attack. It was not a symbolic launch for public display. It was a calculated move designed to test response. As sensors tracked every second, orders quietly circulated. Readiness levels were raised. Units shifted posture without public announcements. External communications were minimized. Nothing was released to the press. Nothing was confirmed publicly. But behind closed doors, the clock was already running. Because actions taken at dawn are not meant for public attention. They are meant for those who understand exactly what they signal. And in the next few minutes, it would become clear whether this move was merely a message or the opening of something far more serious. What happened at dawn was not spontaneous. It was the result of a deliberate decision made hours earlier in Pyongyang. According to intelligence assessments cited by American news outlets, North Korean leadership had been closely monitoring United States military activity in the region for days. Naval movements, air patrols, and command signals were analyzed in detail. To North Korea, this was not routine presence. It was pressure. Inside the North Korean command structure, the objective was clear: respond without starting a war, demonstrate capability without triggering immediate retaliation, send a message that would be seen, measured, and understood. The decision was to act in a narrow window: early morning, low visibility, high strategic attention. The action was designed to be ambiguous, not large enough to justify a strike, not small enough to be ignored. This is the space where North Korea often operates. By choosing a move that stopped just short of open attack, Pyongyang aimed to force American commanders into a familiar dilemma: respond too strongly and risk escalation, or respond too cautiously and appear weak. Timing mattered. Dawn operations limit public visibility while maximizing military sensitivity. Command centers are fully active. Decision makers are alert. Any anomaly stands out immediately. This was not meant for headlines. It was meant for radar screens and briefing rooms. North Korea's leadership also calculated something else: predictability. They understood how United States forces usually respond: heightened readiness, silent repositioning, no immediate public statement, controlled reaction. That predictability was part of the test. If the response followed known patterns, Pyongyang could claim success internally. If it broke pattern, they would gain valuable insight into shifts in American posture. This is how deterrence is measured when direct confrontation is too costly, not through explosions, through reactions. For North Korea, the action served multiple purposes at once. Externally, it challenged American dominance in the region without crossing a declared red line. Internally, it reinforced the image of strength and defiance projected by the regime. And strategically, it gathered information. How fast did the response come? Which units moved first? What changed in the minutes that followed? Those answers mattered more than public attention, because in modern standoffs, information gained during quiet moments can shape future crises. By the time the move was executed, Pyongyang was already watching the response unfold. And as the clock continued to run, one thing became clear: the decision had been made. Now it was time to see what it triggered. The first response came quietly. No public statement, no alerts to the press, no visible show of force. But inside United States command centers, the situation shifted immediately. Within seconds of detection, the anomaly was confirmed as intentional. This was not a navigation error. It was not equipment malfunction. The movement followed a controlled pattern consistent with a deliberate military action. Readiness levels were raised. Air assets already in the region adjusted flight paths. Naval units shifted positions by small but meaningful margins. Electronic monitoring intensified across multiple domains. All of this happened without a single public signal. The first 5 minutes were about verification. Was this a single action or part of a sequence? Was it isolated or coordinated with other units? Was escalation imminent? Analysts watched for secondary indicators: communications traffic, radar emissions, changes along the North Korean coastline. Nothing followed immediately. That was significant. By minute 7, confidence increased that this was a contained action rather than the opening move of a broader operation. Even so, containment did not mean inaction. United States forces began a controlled response. Assets were repositioned not to confront directly, but to close options. Airspace was quietly secured. Maritime routes were adjusted. Defensive systems were brought to higher alert status. The goal was not to respond visibly, it was to be ready. By minute 12, command assessments converged on a single conclusion. This was a test of reaction time and posture, not an attempt to trigger conflict. That did not reduce the seriousness. In fact, it made the situation more delicate. Tests are dangerous precisely because they operate near the threshold of misunderstanding. A delayed response can invite further provocation. An excessive response can escalate unnecessarily. The next 10 minutes were about balance. How much to show? How much to hide? How fast to move without signaling panic? Commanders chose restraint paired with preparedness. No weapons were fired. No warnings were issued publicly. But every relevant unit was now fully engaged. By minute 22, the initial action from North Korea had ended. No follow-up movement was detected. No secondary signals appeared. The moment had passed. But the silence that followed was not calm. It was measured. Because silence in these situations is not the absence of action. It is the result of action happening where the public cannot see it. And as those first 22 minutes concluded, both sides had learned something. North Korea had tested the response. The United States had demonstrated control. The question now was not what had happened. It was what would happen next. The response from the United States was not dramatic. It was precise. There were no public warnings issued, no immediate press briefings, no visible escalation designed for headlines. Instead, the reaction unfolded in layers, deliberately and quietly. The first priority was control. Commanders ensured that every possible path forward was covered. Air patrols were extended. Naval formations adjusted their spacing. Electronic surveillance increased across the region, tracking not just movement, but intent. This was not about sending a message outward. It was about removing uncertainty inward. Within minutes, contingency plans that existed only on paper shifted into live posture. Units did not rush, they repositioned. Every move was calculated to limit North Korea's options without signaling aggression. The United States response followed a familiar principle of deterrence. Be visible enough to be understood. Be restrained enough to avoid escalation. Behind the scenes, communication lines between military leadership and civilian authorities remained open. Assessments were shared in real time. Options were reviewed and deliberately set aside. No strikes were authorized. No warnings were transmitted. That restraint was intentional. According to analysts cited by American news outlets, escalation in moments like this often benefits the side seeking attention. North Korea's action had already been acknowledged. Overreaction would only validate the provocation. Instead, the response focused on readiness. Defensive systems remained active. Commanders prepared for follow-up actions that never came. Forces stayed in position long after the initial movement had ended. This was a signal in itself. Silence does not mean weakness. It can mean control. As the situation stabilized, internal assessments reached a consistent conclusion. The United States had demonstrated awareness, speed, and discipline. Nothing had been missed. Nothing had spiraled. From a strategic perspective, the response achieved its goal. It denied North Korea the escalation it might have wanted. It avoided creating a public crisis, and it reinforced deterrence without firing a single shot. But the episode left an imprint. Because even when nothing happens publicly, something always changes internally. Posture adjustments remain. Readiness levels stay elevated. Assumptions are rewritten. The United States did not respond loudly. It responded correctly. And in confrontations like this, that distinction matters. What mattered most about that morning was not what the public saw. It was what both sides understood. No missiles were launched. No statements were made. No images dominated headlines. Yet the consequences were real. For North Korea, the action confirmed something critical. The United States detected the move immediately, responded within minutes, and maintained full control without escalating. The test produced data, but it also revealed limits. Not every provocation creates leverage. Not every move forces a reaction. For the United States, the episode reinforced a different lesson. Modern deterrence is no longer defined by visible force alone. It is defined by speed, discipline, and restraint under pressure. The response demonstrated that control can be exercised without spectacle. That matters. In regions where tension is constant, escalation often begins not with intention, but with misinterpretation. This time, both sides avoided that trap, but the environment did not reset. After the incident, readiness levels remained elevated. Monitoring continued. Assumptions were reviewed. Quiet adjustments became permanent. These are the invisible outcomes of modern confrontation. Nothing exploded, nothing burned, yet posture shifted. For global security planners, this is the new reality. Confrontations increasingly happen in narrow margins, short windows, ambiguous actions, measured responses. The space between peace and conflict is thinner than it appears. North Korea did not cross into open conflict. The United States did not overreact. Both sides stepped back. But stepping back does not mean stepping away. It means preparing for the next moment when the clock starts again. Because actions like this are not isolated. They are signals. Each one tests assumptions, reactions, and resolve. And over time, those tests shape behavior. The morning passed quietly. The sea remained calm. Normal operations resumed. But beneath that calm, something had changed. Not in public perception, in strategic calculation. And in the world of deterrence, that is often what matters most.